As you may have seen from the last video that I put up, I am going to be looking at the Renegade packs when they come out for the updated rules that Val's putting out. There is more context in the video I put up before. Short version is they have decided, or Val is working on updates to the legacy armies that are more wider ranging than the original changes that we saw. I've talked about whether or not I think that's a good idea in the previous video, and I'll link that down below as well, in case that's something you wanted to hear, the context of what my thoughts are and why I'm going to be looking at these. However, let's get into it. We've got a Renegades army pack for Dark Elves, and also I'll link the video in the description as well. Whether or not you watch the whole video, I would recommend watching at least the first 3 or 4 minutes, and because Val commits to a full emo bit, which is very enjoyable to watch. If you're interested in improving your gameplay outside of just talking about the meta as a whole, or, top-down tactical videos without looking at you as a player, I am a coach that has worked now with 2 international teams as a general premise, working with the teams directly, and with players from 5 international teams across the board. So if you're looking for someone who definitely knows what they're talking about, consider going to patreon.com/closeorder and look at doing some coaching today. So, first of all, Dark Elves Renegades Army List version 1.5.2.1. That is the where we're at in terms of FAQs right now. I believe it's the exact number there. So that's the context for this one. This is, if you're watching it back at a later date, this is sort of back end of March, and we've had a July FAQ, but we haven't had any other major changes in 2026 so far. As mentioned, unofficial, no way endorsed by the creators of the game. That is obvious. You don't have to use these. This is an optional thing. Again, if you want to hear my thoughts more on that, then the previous video, which will be linked in the description as well, you can watch. But the main thing that I just want to very quickly touch on again is this is not, in my mind, necessarily something I would expect to see tournaments running. I wouldn't be opposed to, I wouldn't be surprised if we see these run at the square-based arena in terms of getting some actual playtesting of them at a tournament setting. But if you're not literally Rob, I probably wouldn't expect to see them at your event. This is the first official open draft of this version, so don't worry that you'll have to learn a whole new set of rules for tournament play. This is just what we might be expected to see Renegades move in the direction of. This is just a very quick footnote here, or the opposite. The start, the opposite of a footnote. Any differences to the original Legacy PDFs are in blue. Anything that is different from the previous Renegade version is magenta, anyway. And anything that is like a very early draft, needs more work, is highlighted is as so in yellow. So nice and easy, makes it simple to do, and we can see what they're working with. In terms of what there is incomplete, allies, so you can see who they align with. Fine, sure. I'm not opposed to having this, as just make it a complete product so that you can use it for everything. Obviously, if you're using this at like a competitive setting, if you're going to an event where renegades are used, probably not going to be using allies, but there's no harm in just making sure it covers everything from the top competitive level down to the most casual of whatever you want to go with. Collecting guide, I think this is interesting. This feels very almost early 2000s or maybe late 90s, I'm thinking, for Games Workshop. It's not quite the same vibe, but I remember, I've got the 3rd edition Demon Slayers, whatever it was called for 40k. Demon Hunters? That's gonna bug me. Someone let me know in the comments, please. Anyway, the one with Grey Knights in, they had in there like a how to convert tanks and stuff. I think I seem to remember there was something that was built from like a deodorant bottle, or not a deodorant spray bottle, but one of those. Anyway, Anyway, I think this is interesting. This is not for me, but if you want people to have a nice, easy way of getting hold of the models, if this is going to be used, then I think that's nice to have. Dedication and editor note, cool, sure. And then Monstrous Renegade Fleet Master. They talked about this in the video, and I can't actually remember the exact wording and what they were talking about, but I believe this is basically Monstrous Arcanum for things coming back that were around in previous editions of the game but are being added. So this is more a little bit of a further reach than some of the stuff that we've got in the document so far. Starting off with the actual Legacy army list, and things look pretty similar here. Obviously, it's nice and easy to see what has been added. Characters are just the same. You're still capped at 2 Lord level characters at 2,000 points, so 1 Dreadlord, 1 Supreme Sorceress. In terms of points levels, I assume that when this gets played and play tested, if it makes the army good enough to a level where it should be in a different tier for square-based comp. I'm sure they'll change that as well, because the idea is to make them more playable factions. So leaving them languishing down in the doldrums is probably not the goal, but elves do struggle at the moment anyway. So we've still got 0 to 1 Lord per 1,000 points. We've got the uncapped, just capped by, the match play guide or whatever you're using, for Masters, Sorceress, High Beast Masters, Death Hags, and K-Knight Assassins, and then a 0 to 1 Cauldron of Blood per 1,000 points. So realistically, as many as you could ever want if you did go for them there. And these are also using the dragged along, or the changes for the Cauldron of Blood that are in the current Legacy rule set, I believe. So, not Renegades, sorry, not Legacy, Renegades rule set. I will, when we get to the Cauldron of Blood, we'll talk about that. Core is the same. Uncapped Warriors, Repeated Crossbowmen, Black Orc Corsairs, Dark Riders. The Black Orc Corsairs actually have a place because they're going to be tweaked later on. And then also 0 to 1 unit of Witch Elves as core if you take 1 or more Death Hags. This is, again, just the same. Nice and simple. It's an interesting way to make your army more themed if you like the Witch Elves as your main theme. And you technically can then do like a full Death Hag or Witch Elf themed army, as long as all of your core is tied up in 1 unit. Special, same on all these similar units here, and then 0 to 1 unit of Blackguard of Naggaroth per 1,000 points, as opposed to the capped version that you can get in the current Legacy PDF. And then also, if you've got a High Beast Master, 0 to 1 War Hydra or Charybdis can be taken as a special choice. These are normally in rare, so it just opens up more points that you can spend on monsters if you want to go for a Monster Mash style list, which is fine, honestly, because if we're looking at the points that are spent, this doesn't actually increase the number of points you can spend on monsters, because already you could spend 1,000 points on monsters in core, in characters, sorry, and then you've got to take 500 points in core, and then you're left with 500 points left, which is rare. Or if you want to run less points in characters, you can instead go for more monsters in the rare and special. So this is not something that I'm looking at as like a problem or an undestabilizing point. I think it'll probably still be best to run double dragon, and then if you really want monsters to take them, rare, special, whatever. In rare, basically the same, but also adds merworms, which is interesting. This is where, and my critique of these is always going to be coming from like a competitive game balance level of things. I did play, I want to say it was the end of 5th edition through to sort of like the end of 7th edition when I initially played, but as I've mentioned before on this channel, I don't really remember much of my time with Fantasy in terms of specifics. It was more like I remember the vibe of playing and the general approach. So when things are being added in, maybe merworms are something that Dark Elves could take in previous editions. I assume there's a justification for this. Or maybe it's just they're not used at all, so maybe maybe it's just a case of why not let the army that can take Beastmasters take them. I have no strong feelings on this. From a game balance perspective, they're bad. Like, they're just not a good unit, which is unfortunate. I was quite excited to see what they would be in the when they were teased for the Arcane Journal High Elves. But, yeah, we'll see. If this lets people take more fun-themed armies, I don't see why I'd be opposed to that. The rest of that looks the same. Allies, Warriors of Chaos only, sure. And nothing else to be talked about there. Moving on to the special rules, this is where we start to see a little bit of source. So there was context about Eternal Hatred in terms of whether or not this should be buffed, because previously Dark Elves had more hatred in their hearts than they do. This is just the current rule. Against High Elves, you have hatred in every round of close combat, not just the first. I think, and this is just as a general premise, the community, well, people in general, and this is not to target specifics, this is just in general, people are very, very good at looking at something and seeing whether it's a problem or not, but are usually pretty poor at coming up with good solutions. I'm not putting forwards a solution for this. What I'm going to talk about is whether or not I think it would be an issue to change things. So, something that is frustrating from a game balance perspective is if you have any models or any rules that specifically target a certain enemy, army, or unit or type, that can make them feel very bad to have for one of the two players. If I was to play 100 tournament games with Dark Elves and I only came up against 3 High Elf players, I'd feel pretty hard done by that one of my special rules that adds flavour to the army, that adds theoretical power to the army, was, like 3% of the time I got to use it. I'm pulling numbers out of my backside. I'm not actually sure exactly what the play rate of High Elves is. They are, to be fair, one of the slightly more popular factions, not necessarily because they are super strong, but people like Elves, and Double Dragon is quite a straightforward way to play. So maybe you'll see it more than I'm saying that you will. But as a general premise, I dislike rules that are keyed into only fighting against a single army. However, they're also thematic. So in terms of flavour, this is incredible flavour. So you've got your Dark Elves, they do their thing, you've got all of their power tied up in whatever budget you've got, the other special rules, the general rules you've got on the models, their stat line, all of that stuff. They do what they say on the tin. And then you get the grudge match, and suddenly you get an additional bonus. I think that's interesting. I do think that's interesting. I'm not 100% sure whether I want it changed. If I was trying to change things from a game balance perspective, I'd say get rid of this rule, replace it with something that just gives you a flat bonus all of the time, and then maybe gives a cosmetic bonus against High Elves. But from a flavour perspective, I think it's good. So I'm not going to offer an opinion on this. I'm curious to see if there are any interesting changes that could be brought in. But for now, we're just going to leave it at that. And that's my general premise on whether things should or shouldn't be tied in. Sorry, just to go back to that. As an army-wide rule, it's kind of whatever. This is almost like, it's not as bad as, but it's almost like Aquatic for Lizardmen, where some things have move through cover for water features only. And like when it comes up, you're like, oh, amazing. And then the rest of the time it doesn't come up and you probably forget you have it, apart from to complain about having it and it being completely pointless. So yeah, that is what it is. Magic items or purchasable rules or abilities that specifically affect other armies, that's where I really have an issue with it. So like a banner that gives you hatred against dwarves. Well, you only take that if you know you're playing against dwarves, which is probably not going to be in a tournament setting, and it's probably going to be in a setting where you're playing against your friend. And then it feels bad for your opponent because they're like, oh, you've tech to beat me. This, great, love that. So, yeah, I'd like to see, again, as mentioned, rules that have a good effect, that are worth thinking about, but then have a cosmetic effect against whichever enemy they are fated to fight against. Like, I actually don't love fear on goblins against elves. That it doesn't come up all that much, to be fair, so maybe I shouldn't complain about it, but your army just being worse because you're playing against another army does feel pretty rough. Anyway, moving on. Hecatare's Blessing. This has been changed. Right now, the way that Hecatare's Blessings work is once per game, you get to reroll a single failed casting roll. This is a worse version of High Elves. There are 3 elf factions. Wood Elves have no bonus to cast inbuilt in their rules. High Elves have a reroll 1 spell a turn, and Dark Elves were in the middle, where they had 1 reroll per game. It was still good to have the 1 reroll per game, and when I was playing Dark Elves, this was mostly prior to 1.5. I found that reroll to be useful. You could do very strong things with Pillar of Fire. That's no longer really the case, and I actually think the casting that you can bring with Dark Elf Wizards is... I'm more bringing a wizard because I wanted a spell threat than I want someone to be able to do a lot of damage themselves. And that's not always true. But if you're going double dragon, the actual casting that is brought from the wizard is not super important. I don't know that Dark Elf wizards are not super useful for ranged output anymore now that battle magic is nerfed. They're okay, they're not bad. The one place that I could see wanting a reroll really badly from a game balance perspective is if you were doing the elementalism style of Dark Elf Wizard, which means you're probably not on a dragon, which means you're not running double dragon. So immediately we're looking at, unfortunately, the unfortunate reality of Elves at the moment is that double dragon is probably going to be the strongest thing you can do. So you're already not doing maybe the best thing that you could do or could have done with the legacy rules. Let's keep an open mind. If we move into the Renegades factions, maybe there are more interesting things we can do. I hope so. That'd be fun. But you're already not, if you're on the back of a wizard, you kind of don't care about the reroll to cast. It'd be nice to have, but losing it is not the end of the world. And if you're going elementalism for Plague of Rust, I'm not 100% sure what you're bringing that's going to get a huge amount of value out of it. You could try and do some sort of infantry Death Star, but that, I think, more hinges on external rules changes. So if you're playing at an event where you can run special or rare infantry and have them score objectives, strategic locations being all core units, but also infantry units that aren't in core. At that point, maybe the elementalism caster gets more strength. But so for me, I'm not super worried about losing the reroll to cast, and actually rerolling to dispel right now is very powerful. It's not to say that I think it's too good. I think this is an ability that is very meaningful in the game as it stands, and honestly, outside of the game skewing to being basically caster agnostic, I think this is an ability that you'll be very happy to have. Val did talk about how thematically it feels weird that High Elves and Dark Elves have them this way round, but he then also does include a spell later on to make a difference there. So that's something else. We'll look at that later on. But yeah, I actually think this is interesting. I quite like it as an option. Being able to reroll a single failed dispel a turn is good. Dispelling, unless you have other bonuses to dispel, you are at an inherent disadvantage compared to your opponent. You have to beat their roll, so if you're both casting with +2, you have to roll one higher on the dice than them. And also, Dark Elves have way less bonuses to dispel than there are bonuses to cast in the meta. So this is nice to have. It doesn't make them overpowered, but I'm actually pretty happy to see it. Murderous. This one is, I don't know, it breaks the formatting of this style of rule, in my opinion. I don't think it's a problem. I don't think it's too strong. In fact, if you look at the Murderous rule, it's not on as many things as you think it might be, if I'm remembering correctly. So, current version is that your hand weapons, if you have this rule, reroll 1s to wound, and that's it. This is a bad rule. It doesn't do anything. It's completely irrelevant. Oh, I've got some strength 3 hand weapon attacks, or if you're on the back of your Cold One Knights, I've got strength 4 hand weapon attacks. I think they've got Murderous. I'll have to check. But rerolling 1s to wound all of the time is an incredibly powerful ability. So this is maybe something that is stronger than it needs to be. However, then you put in the context of who's getting it. Usually low number of attacks. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like having this as an always-on flat reroll 1s to wound is probably too good just on the templating of the ability. If we look at the other armies, the closest that this comes is Choppers for Orcs and Goblins. They get reroll 1s to wound and also an extra AP, but only on the charge. That's stronger, obviously, but more limited. But then you can go to other armies like High Elves, which is like reroll 1s to hit with hand weapons. Terrible. Bad roll. So, yeah, this maybe should have another rider on it. Obviously, it doesn't work with magical weapons. That's standard for this sort of rule. But in terms of not a power level balancing, this should maybe just be rerolls first round of combat, something like that. Really sort of hammer home the, maybe they've got Hatred, maybe they've got Murderous, maybe they've got Elven Reflexes. All of these rules make the first round of combat with a Dark Elf unit quite spicy, and then after that, you're more in the sort of grind where things are a little bit more even, and just also on par with other rules writing that exists in the game at current. Moving into the magic items, weapons looking exactly the same. Something they mentioned in the video is as well that there's not very many of them, and that's because there's obviously no arcane journals. If you're used to playing the core factions, you'll be used to seeing a lot more choices. I will say these are, while maybe not incredible, probably some of the better magic weapons specifically in the game. You know, I've played Executioner's Axe at a tournament with a Spectral Doppelganger Wizard. It wasn't a great build, but it was, you know, there was a world for it. Life Taker, 35 points for a D3+1 multiple shot weapon is fine. You know, it's probably about on par. I will be eternally amused by the fact that poison attacks don't technically work with magic weapons because it says that they don't. But I think we all just don't talk about that, and we handshake agree that actually, if it says poison attacks on a weapon, you get the poison attacks on the weapon. Into the magic armor, they changed the cost of these two items, and if I'm remembering correctly, this is more, so the Shield of Grond just got more expensive from previous editions, whereas magic items from previous editions have across the board got a little bit cheaper, is the rationale I seem to remember here. Shield of Grond at 30 points I don't think is an issue. The only thing that might differ is how well it stacks on characters on dragons in terms of the 500 point cap, but you could already go for a ward save and the Shield of Grond and like a lance, so I actually don't think that's really a concern. 30 points for this effect, -1 strength for incoming attacks. It's difficult. This is where we would start to, you know, this is where I'd maybe think, is there a 2-tier split for items should be costed for if you're like on foot or cavalry or whatever, compared to being riding a monster? Because this on a T6 model is obviously far better than on the back of a cold one. If you're on a cold one, you have this for 30 points. I might not even spend this. I'd be probably more tempted to, if you wanted to spend 30 points on defenses, go for a Talisman of Protection. However, on the back of a dragon, this is very good. So I don't think 30 points is a problem, but maybe just, and within the Renegades pack, it's probably not the place to start doing split pointing. But yeah, something I'd like to see in future balance updates or future editions of the game. I think if the core system stays the same, where we're looking at having monsters that get massive stat boosts in terms of a magic item on a 9 wound model that's T6 is way stronger than on 3 wounds T4, something maybe needs to be done there. All right, Banner of Naggaroth, 50 points for stubborn and also +1 combat res. I think it's 65 right now, honestly. I should double check that one. Yes, the previously 65 points, comparing it to the base core standard that's 50 points for stubborn. This is probably fine. A lot of units can buy stubborn, and it's often a pointer model. +1 combat res, you know, theoretically, if we're talking a unit of 25 models, which for elves is a lot of models because elves are pricey, 25 points, you know, at 1 point per model, and then 25 points for a war banner, that feels pretty fine. I think this is a super reasonable thing to go for, and it makes it more playable. 40 points for Standard of Slaughter is very funny. It's very cheap for what it does. You do have to put it on a unit that is charged, but if you want to go for like a Cav Death Star, you can just do that. This is just in the game at the moment. People don't run it, because Banner of Harganeth's so good, Totem of Wrath's really good, Monster Hunter Standard, those would probably be the standards I'd go for first, but yeah. Anyway, something to keep in mind if you want to go for it. This is a change here on the Black Dragon Egg that I really like. This is what I think all potions and consumable items should do. Until your next command subphase, you get the effect, which is T6 and a breath weapon. Right now, all consumables fall off at the end of your turn, which makes this one especially completely useless. Well, not completely useless, almost completely useless. Because being able to pop this on like an infantry character or a cavalry character, maybe use it as a bit of a roadblock, or you've gone for a manticore character, but you're like, you know what, I want to have in the back pocket the ability to just be a little bit tankier for a turn. I think this makes this an item that's probably still too pricey for what it does, frankly. But it's got a use. I can see use for it. Whereas when it's just, this is on my turn only, I charge you, hope that the T6 means I don't die, and then it comes around to your turn and I lose the buff. That's not something that I think is worth going for. So, yeah, anyway. This change, very cool. I like it. This is what should be changed in the game at a baseline. And then Tome of Furion, 15 points, and you know more than one more spell than normal for the level of Wizardry, which is, right now, it's not extremely common. This is changing it to extremely common, and I believe it's the same points cost, 15 points as it stands. This is fine in terms of like changing the power level or bringing it in line with like a spell familiar for Warriors of Chaos. If Pillar of Fire hadn't been nerfed, I'd worry that this would lead to negative play patterns. I mean, realistically, am I worried about spamming elf wizards? Not massively. Do I think that this item should be in the game this way for any faction? Not massively. It's fine. This is bringing it in line with the rest of the game. I just think that Spell Familiar should be not an extremely common item. I don't want to see the ability to spam out lots of cheap wizards that know lots of spells. If you want to go for that sort of playstyle, there should be downsides to it. And also, signature spells should not be as good as they are. You know, signature magic missile should not be something that you can swap into consistently. Looking at you, Viletide, let's avoid that if we can. But yeah, this is fine. That's just a general critique of where we are in terms of spell damage, because if you make a spell too strong, it's very hard to fix that systematically in the game as Games Workshop. Now, this is where I would say I have some more criticisms. Everything up until this point has been fine. I haven't really had any issues with. I think I don't like 2 of the 3 of these, maybe? Would I say 2 of the 3 of these? Anyway, let's talk about them. But I think these do need to be changed. And I will say, first of all, this cursing word, it was pointed out to me by Callum. Callum's on Team Scotland. Callum is a Dark Elf player. He was playing Dark Elves before me. You may have seen him pop up. He used to go by more Dark Elf content. Has changed his name more frequently than I change armies, which is impressive, frankly. So, cursing word. It's cast in a 9. It's a 12-inch range hex. Remains in play. While in play, the target enemy unit reduces either its weapon skill or ballistic skill characteristic to 1. So this is a massive debuff. Remember, you can never hit on anything worse than a 5 on your baseline. So if if your weapon skill 1, your opponent's weapon skill 10, but they have glittering robes, you'll be hitting 6, but otherwise it is just 5s. There's no nerfing to that level. Ballistic skill, on the other hand, if you have ballistic skill 1, you're hitting 6s before penalties, and we know that penalties are heinous in this game for ballistic skill shooting. So this is a very, very powerful debuff in terms of what it brings. Now, the thing that was pointed out to me and why this might be a problem is, and it's probably already been fed back to Val by now, and I'm sure he's thought about it as an option. There is an item called the Focus Familiar that is 10 points, single use. You can use it when you attempt to cast a spell, and you cast it from the marker, but you still dispel from the wizard, unless something is changed with the Focus Familiar. Why is that a problem? This is a Remains in Play spell. Generally not a fan of Remains in Play spells as, hexes or buffs, because hexes especially, you want to get rid of them on your turn, and having the ability to do so, you've got a second dispel. You try and dispel it on your turn, on their turn when they cast the spell, and then when it comes around to your turn, you'll try and dispel it in your enchantment phase. However, because this can be cast out of range of your opponent, and the balancing mechanic of this being it's an incredibly strong debuff, especially for ballistic skill shooting. It's an incredibly strong debuff for shooting or, offensively as well, because if you're weapon skill 1, I'm going to be hitting you on 2s with basically any unit in the game. Even zombies hit you on 3s. Like, come on, what are we doing? The balancing mechanic of it is it's a very short range spell. Casting value of 9 is also good because on a fated dispel you have to roll a 10 on the dice, which is that's like is it a 1 in 6? Yeah, it's a roughly 1 in 6 chance. So there is a very good chance that if the spell is cast on your unit outside of dispel range, it just stays on that unit forever. And that is probably too strong. Because of Focus Familiar, you can cast it from 24 inches away, which theoretically, yes, that is the range of dispel, but where your wizard is positioned compared to their wizard, you can just hit a unit with this, and that's probably too good. How would I change it? I know I said that people are generally good at finding fixes and not finding problems and not fixes. Maybe just don't make it remains in play. Maybe that is the this is one of those spells that only lasts until the end of your turn. Maybe this is something that you use purely as like an offensive debuff. I know it wouldn't work for ballistic skill, or it would be barely worth doing for ballistic skill, but you could do on your turn and you use it as more of an offensive buff. As it stands, this is probably too good. I think this in my opinion needs to be changed. Again, this feedback will probably have reached out by now, so that's not a surprise, but this is what I don't like. Power of Darkness as well. I don't think I like this spell, and I can't really put my finger on why. And I know that there are other ways to increase your casting prowess in previous editions, but having a spell that just gives you a +1 cast modifier that remains in play, I think that's too good. Maybe it's just like, would I have a problem with this spell if it was you cast it range self until your next start of turn subphase you get +1 to cast, or maybe not even on their turn. Maybe it's just until the end of turn you get +1 to cast. I think because it's a remains in play spell, that might be too strong, and especially because there are theoretically multiple remains in play spells here that you could work with. And again, I know you can't have multiple signature spells from your own lore, so there's no way to get multiple signature spells here for Dark Elves, I believe. Let me know if I've missed something. So like, if Cursing Word is on, you don't have Power of Darkness on the same wizard, but if you've got a hex that you're casting with Focus Familiar anyway, which is one of the strong things that you can do with Dark Elves, Power of Darkness is never going to get dispelled because you're always going to try and remove Cursing Word. So I think making your opponent have to cast it every turn is probably the way that I'd go with this. And a flat +1 to cast as your signature spell, losing the consistency of just having a good spell every turn is nice, and you can't have this with Lore Familiar. I think it's probably fine. I think it's probably fine to just have a flat +1 to cast, given the inconsistency that comes with. Yes, you can spend a lot of points. You can have a level 4 wizard with a 5th spell, and you can know most of the lore, but there's still a level of inconsistency in there. So I think this is fine. I don't think this combos with anything in a way that really worries me. And by taking it, you're losing out on, you're not having Glittering Robes on that caster. You're not having another really good like hex like Cursing Word if this version was to make it to like a tournament level pack. You don't have the summoning. So you can't combo this with, be like, oh, I'm just going to be a really good blaster caster. You could roll into Wind Blast, or you could roll into Fireball. I'm not really worried about either of those being cast at +1. So yeah, I think this is fine in terms of the effect, but I don't love that it remains in play. That feels too strong to me. Black Horror. This is, I believe, just updated for the change in Vortex spells. I don't think this is necessarily changed to like be buffed. I think this is just changed to bring it in line with the Vortex spells that were changed in the 1.5 FAQ back in 2025. So all it says is 18-inch range, large blast template, which is very long range, but again, this is as printed. Whilst in play, it's difficult terrain. It scatters 2d6 at the start of every turn at subphase, and if it hits, if they move through it, or if it moves over, they take d6 strength tests, and if for each fail, they lose a single wound. This is fine. I'm still probably not taking this. I find the inconsistency of a Vortex frustrating, but while it is a random move strength test, it's enemy units only, which makes it one of the better Vortexes, and it's also a large blast template, so you can get a lot of value out of it. I find my favourite thing with blast templates that move is usually that they stay still, and I've just placed them down as a piece of mobile cover. So in terms of their actual 2d6 movement, as opposed to a single d6, that is a little bit of a nerf, but again, we're just looking at what the spell is basically. And again, I think it's literally just been tweaked to bring it in line with the rest of them. So that was just my general thoughts on Black Horror and why I don't play it, as opposed to this being a problem with the pack. So, first of all, we've got Nobles. There's no changes. This is exactly the same. These are still good with dragons. The BSB Master is still pretty decent. Being able to put them on a cold one is nice. There are slight changes for the mount options. There is a Dark Pegasus option that was added in the previous version of the Renegades pack for Dark Elves. I don't really have, I haven't actually seen anyone use that, so I don't know that I have any major thoughts on it. But we can get to that when we look at the mounts. But yeah, no changes for Dark Elf Nobles. Changes for Sorceresses. Obviously, there is the Blessing of Hecatari. Sorry, Hecatari's Blessing, that we've talked about the change already. Maybe this should be... Should this be highlighted to note that it's changed? Maybe it shouldn't. That's just a formatting question. But these have changed in points. They've gone up 5 points because their Hecatari's Blessings got better. That's fine. They're still a very versatile wizard. They've got 5 laws. They can be level 4, level 2. They have magic items. They can be mounted. Cool. Yeah, these things are one of the better units in the book as it stands. I will pay the extra 5 points for the Dispel every return. I think that's fine. And also, I think it's a good almost concession in that it's like, hey, we've made this unit better. It was already pretty good. You're going to pay slightly more for it. Sweet. I can do that. How many points would I pay for a once per game plus 1 to reroll cast? Not that many points. 10, 15. How much would I pay for a reroll once per turn Dispel? Probably 30 points. So I feel like we're getting a discount on the rule, but I also don't think that you need to pay the full value of the rule there. So yeah, plus 5 points here makes perfect sense to me. Beastmasters, no changes. Death Hags. This is where we are seeing the first changes. Warband on Death Hags. I think this really helps. The leadership thing is not really much of an issue. Obviously, you've got, Frenzy, so your immune psychology on the way in. If you're losing combat, you've got bigger issues than just losing combat. So, yeah, I think having the Hags have Warband is nice, gives them a little bit more consistency in getting in. There's also talk about the Gifts of Cain, and again, I actually don't know what they had in previous editions. I remember something along the lines of this, or maybe it was poisons, or maybe I'm conflating two systems. But yeah, I think in terms of the attack one, that's probably always going to be the best choice. The only time that I've seen anyone go with any of the, the Death Hag, it's with Rune of Cain and like an Ogre Blade. You could go Witch Brew if you put them on the back of a Cauldron of Blood, because the Cauldron of Blood can join units in the Renegades version of the rules. So, yeah, I mean, these all seem okay. I don't have strong feelings on them. I guess the only thing I'd say is extra attacks plus D3 for 10 points is wild. But that's what Games Workshop wrote. That's not anything that's been changed here. I just think the value on that is insane. And maybe there's scope. It's a shame that they've got low because they can't join other units, but theoretically, you just fill out the front unit of a unit of Witch Elves with Death Hags and give them extra attacks D3 and a cheap magic weapon, and job's good. Do I think that's good? No, I think you've got real issues with getting your whatchamacallums into combat, your Witch Elves, but that's fine. Anyway, yeah, Warband here, that feels fine. Kind of fits the flavour. Plus leadership is okay, but not super impactful in my opinion, because again, you shouldn't be losing combat, and if you're losing combat, then you're kind of screwed anyway, because you're T3 naked bodies. Getting the reroll on the charge is nice there, and kind of fits with what I think a Death Hag should be. Kaelan Assassin getting poisoned attacks. Sure. Yeah, that's fine. That probably should just be there anyway. I know we've got Forbidden Poison, but does it hurt to have the, like, anytime you roll a 6 to hit with your 3 attacks, or if you go for additional hand weapon, just getting plus 2 to wound? No, I think that's fine. And again, these don't work with magical weapons, so that's also fine. I'm not worried about it. It's a nice flavor change, and it doesn't make them too good, in my opinion. Forbidden Poisons, clarifying that the leadership modifier is to a minimum of 1 is good. I believe there's something in the... This has existed in various different versions of Fantasy, and I can't remember if I'm conflating it with something else. But I think if you hit 0 in a stat that isn't movement, you just die. I'm not 100% sure if that applies to leadership, but it'd be very funny to see someone get hit by the Forbidden Poison and they just get nuked out of existence as a unit. Yeah, the fact that it only works on characters means that this is quite poor rule. It's unsaved wounds. You don't really have great weapons that you can go with, so you're looking at probably buying a magic weapon for a 3-attack model, and then you've got the poison that you've got to spend the points for as well. Sure. Again, not a comment about the Legacy Pack. This is just a point about Dark Elves as a general army to a minimum of 1. Nice clarity added there. Otherwise, no other real thoughts. I think this, to me, is a better unit because I like Corsairs more. And theoretically, you start the Corsairs off the board and you ambush them, which is a new rule that they have, and then you might have a Canine Assassin in. So I can see this being a unit that you've got more interest in taking in this version of the rules. But that's, again, something we can get to when we get to the Corsairs. Finally, we've got the character mounts. Dark Pegasus. This is just the equivalent of a Pegasus from, I assume it's the Empire Pegasus that Val's just lifted the stats from. But again, this has been in the game for, what, 6 months? Something like that. I don't think it's broken anything. It is what it is. That's, it's just, here we are. We've got a Pegasus. +1 wound. Otherwise, doesn't really do anything. Sure. Obviously, I think it was 8th edition that the Dark Pegasus was something that would bring PTSD level flashbacks to. I don't think you can do anything like that with Dark Elves in this version, and we haven't seen anything like that taking the tournament world by storm. So if you are a veteran and you see this and you break out in sweats, I think don't worry about that. Countercharge on the Cold Ones. We will talk about that when we get to the Cold One Knights, but that is something that they are lacking, and it does give them a lot more strength on the Cold Ones. So we'll talk about that when we get to the Cold One Knights specifically. Moving into the core, we've got the Repeater Crossbowmen going from 11 points down to 10 points. I have two thoughts on this. First of all, they're not game breaking. It's fine. It's not the end of the world. However, if we compare them to their closest cousins in High Elves, it's 10 points per model for a High Elf Archer, which doesn't come with the light armor, and it doesn't have the possibility of buying a shield. So the Repeater Crossbowmen are objectively way stronger. They are not a bad unit at all. I quite like them. I've taken them to a tournament post 1.5 and took a moderate size unit that was like unit champion, close order, 14 or 16 models, gave them shields, and it felt okay for the points you're spending. I'm not upset that they're going down to 10 points a model. I think it does make them better than the High Elf equivalent. So if that is something that concerns you, I guess that's something to point out. However, in this case, yeah, it's really not game breaking. Elves are probably still too expensive for what they bring. Like 8 points for this stat line is probably just not it, unfortunately. Although I do really like Dark Elf Warriors more than I like High Elf Spearmen, because you don't have to pay for the spear. So at 8 points per model, you've just got the cheapest elf you can have that's got, light armor, shield, gets you to a 4-up save in combat. Their upgrades, their command, 5 points per model. They can have magic banners. I think this is an okay unit in terms of, like, it's not a unit that makes me excited to play Dark Elves, but in terms of if you want to put them on the table, this unit is not losing you the game. Seeing the unit change from 10 plus to 5 plus, I think is nice as well, because that brings it more in line with what I'd expect to see from this side of the unit. High Elf Archers are a 5 plus. I don't know about the Spearmen. The Spearmen might be a 10 plus, but I think being able to take them in smaller unit sizes is nice. It doesn't really matter. I can't imagine I'd ever want to run a unit that's probably less than 10 points, 10 models in core, because that's how you score objectives, strategic locations. But it opens them up to, if you were playing, Battle March or something like that, you're like, oh, do I really want to take 10 Repeater Crossbowmen when I could take 6 and have more points, or take like a couple of smaller units? So yeah, as a change for smaller point sizes, smaller game sizes, I think that's fine. Sure, it's whatever. Black Orc says, this actually made me go, wait, do I want to play Dark Elves? Which is an incredible change, because you've made me excited about the possibilities of an army without doing something that I think is super OP. With that said, no, because you can only take 2 units of them with ambush. I think so. Corsairs right now are bad. You have to take 10 of them. They have no shields, so they're an infantry unit that is immediately super squishy. They've got a 6-up save, and it can't be improved. They get either additional hand weapons or repeater handbows, both of which are like fine. They're mediocre. They are what they are. And they have no place. They are less shooty than the crossbows. They're less tanky than the warriors. They're less tanky than the crossbows as well. They don't have, they're open order, so they've got something there. But if you want to move and shoot them, they're not doing a lot. The Dragon Cloak is nice, to be fair. It gives you a +1 to your save against non-magical shooting. you could also just take it on, take a shield on the crossbows, and suddenly you've got a 5-up save against all shooting, and a 4-up save in combat. So they really just didn't have a point. Also, additional hand weapons. Oh no, I get 2 attacks that are bad, as opposed to having 1 attack that's bad and also a 4-up save in combat, which is more useful. So, yeah. They really didn't have a point. Now you can take them with ambushes. I think they have a point. Theoretically, also Vanguard is fine if you wanted to get onto an objective at the start of the game, but they only have a 5-inch move, so Vanguard isn't going to allow you to stand on objectives on the central line most of the time. So encirclement or open battle, whatever that's called, fields of battle, if you've got your standard 12 inches in deployment zone, and if the objectives are on the central mark, you're not going to get in range of them. I believe there's nothing that would get you close there, because you're only moving 5 inches. Yeah, anyway. That aside, the fact that they can have ambushes now, I think, is good. You're paying a premium for it, but 12 points a model for an ambushing unit that can come in and try and deal with, harass the backline, try and get into cannons, come in and deal with baggage trains, just come in and harass the unit that's holding the strategic locations. This is fine. I think this is a solid unit to have. In terms of, for people who don't know, let's have a look at the repeater handbow profile, and you'll see that it's incredibly whatever. 12-inch range, strength 3, multiple shots, 2 quick shots. So you'll come on, you won't have a penalty for shooting, but you'll have a penalty for multiple shots. You'll probably have a penalty for range, because you've only got a 12-inch range gun as well. So, you've got ambushes coming in, shooting 2 shots at hitting on 5s. That's fine. That is fine. It's strength 3, no AP. It's probably not doing a huge amount, but it's just nice that you can put pressure on. The Reaver having magic items up to a total of 25 points, I don't have a strong opinion on. I don't really care. 25 points does not really get you anything that's super game-breaking. I guess the one thing that they could combo with is the... what's it called? The Guiding Eye. It gives you a once per game reroll all failed rerolls to hit in the shooting phase. That's fine. So that does open that as a combo. You come in the back lines and you try and unload. But remember, the gun that you've got is 2 shots. Multiple shots, 2, strength 3, no AP, quick shot. I don't think I care. I think I'm absolutely fine. Also, sorry to go back and forth, but if I just double check the wording, I think it's specifically in your shooting phase as well. During the shooting phase. So you can't even use it to try and cheese like a lot of combat res if you come in the back line and then, you can't re-roll it on your standard shoot or something like that. So, yeah, cool. Being able to give them veteran as well is fine. I think that's not a problem. There's going to be veteran Corsairs. If you want to run a more Corsair-themed force, you can go, here's a couple of units that have been around the block a bit more, or you can just do other things. So, yeah, sure, like it. I'd love to see them skirmishers as well, but I don't think that's necessarily like a level of power we need to give them. I'm okay with them just being as they are. Next up, we've got the Blackguard. These are heavy infantry instead of regular infantry. I'll be honest, I didn't even realize they're heavy infantry. So the equivalent to these is the Phoenix Guard. So you're looking at full plate, which gives you a 4-up save. Full plate is less good now, in my opinion, on infantry than it was at the start of the edition. I'd almost rather just have heavy armor and a shield, because that gets you to a 3-up save, but you've got your halberds, so a 4-up save at all times, and then also the Dread Halberd, giving you, a 200 weapon that you can use. Cool. Again, 5+, I probably don't ever want to take an infantry unit that's, a ranked up close order infantry unit like that, that's small. Sure, you're still paying through the nose for them. 15 points, I think, is ludicrous for this sort of unit, but again, that's a systematic issue with elves in terms of what we're looking at. Giving the Murderous for the rerolling 1s to wound, this is actually a pretty meaningful buff to this unit, in my opinion, because you're going to be strength 4, which means that you'll be wounding on 3s more often than you'd be, the things you want to fight. You want to be fighting other infantry. A lot of infantry in the game is strength 3. So wounding on 3s, rerolling 1s is a pretty reasonable efficiency boost. Just ask Jade Warriors with their 3-up save and their rerolling 1s. Anyway, also bringing the halberd up to speed with the change to just general halberds. This is nice. Getting AP2 on the turn you charged against the models that you charged. This is in line with halberds. This is a good change. I like to see it. That's one of my big concerns, or not concerns, one of my big complaints about how Legacy has been treated in general, is that all of the things that they should have had updated haven't been. So seeing this updated like so is nice. And heavy infantry going on them. I feel like they should have been heavy infantry in the first place. This is honestly much more of a light touch than I think this unit needs to be playable, but it's nice to see. Naggaroth Executioners, this is your Swordmaster equivalent. I actually can't remember what they used to be. Apologies. I'm not even going to cut. I'm just going to go to here. What do we got in terms of... Swordmasters are 14 points a model. Okay. And then we've got the... Naggaroth Execution is 15 points a model. So right now they cost 1 point more than Swordmasters, and they're being cut by 2 points to go down to 13, which is 1 point less than Swordmasters. And I'm also just going to have to double check because I can't remember. Yeah, Swordmasters have to pay for their drilled as well. So this is... Let's start with, are people playing Swordmasters? Not many. I do see people take them, but they don't really seem to do anything in my expectation. I still don't think this is a good unit, but Dark Elves are much better equipped to use a unit like this than High Elves are, because the mobility that you can get from High Elves, and this is talking more their regular wizards, I guess you can get dark magic with their Stormweavers. You can't get Demonology, can you? Yeah, okay. So there's no access to Demonology. If you have an infantry unit like this, basically the way to use it is Demonology. You want Steed of Shadows, you want Demonic Vessel. Demonic Vessel gets them up to 2 attacks each. It also gets them up to Strength 7, which is more than you need. AP 3, because they've been buffed here. So it's basically just the attacks that you're really fishing for with Demonic Vessel. But yeah, this is solid, I think. It's still not good. It's still not, in my opinion, going to make tournament lists. Even though you could put a wizard in here as a bully piece and you could steal a shadow them around the board. The problem with this style of unit is you want to put a lot of points into it. And if you're doing that and it's not scoring you points, it can become very difficult for it to interact in the game in a meaningful manner. Even if you do have a wizard that's going to be trying to cast Steed of Shadows every turn. And you've also lost your ability to reroll a spell that you just had baseline. Yeah. I think it's interesting, though. I think I'd be tempted to play around with a unit, like a Death Star unit, and put a wizard in there with Demonic Vessel and just try and kill things. Problem is, a lot of the stuff that you're going to try and kill in the meta, like the stuff that's good, isn't going to fall over to this. So you'll be hitting the... If you can catch the Beastman unit, you'll do some pretty decent damage, but you'll just die in droves to the Black Maul Beast Lord. But good luck catching it, because they've got 1 to 2 Steed of Shadows in that list, and they've got a lot of battle bonuses to cast, so if they're worried about you charging, they can just fly over the top. It doesn't necessarily deal well with dragons or anything like that, in that you can win combat res through just throwing your unit champion under the bus, but it doesn't kill the dragon themselves. Strength 7 AP2. That's pretty good. And it's at initiative great weapons. Yeah, I don't know. This is interesting. I don't think this makes it a good unit. I think you'd have to go further with this to make it really good. But I think they're interesting changes, and it's something that I can see playing around with. And I think that I'm not even sure if I've talked about this. The general premise for what this is meaning to achieve isn't necessarily to make it like the most competitive tournament army, but it's to make it so that you can play this at a standard where your friends are playing other armies and you don't feel sad to do so. And I think this brings the unit more in line with that, and I think that's good there. Also, can they not buy drills normally? Is that just an ability that they're getting added to? No. Oh, it's 2 points per model. Okay. Yeah, bring the drilled in line with the Swordmasters, I think, is super fine as well. And being able to get up to 50 points worth of magic items is nice. You probably just give them double Obsidian Lodestone or something like that if you're trying to run them as a Death Star. But yeah. Okay, cool. Interesting. Again, like Swordmasters, I don't think it necessarily makes them a good unit, but at least there's something you can do with them. The fact that they've only got heavy armor and no other defensive ability does make them... It makes me sweat in terms of thinking about putting them in a list. Shades. How many points were Shades before? I've played Shades at a tournament, and they were aggressively okay. I didn't hate them. 75 points a model. So they were 15 points already. I don't know why this has changed here. In the Renegade... Oh, because they've got the light armor built in? No. Okay, so this is in purple, and I don't know if they changed them in a previous version of the Renegades book to change them like down to 14 or something like that. But they're currently 15, so the points there are the same, but they've got the light armor built in. I think that's fine. You know, a 6-up armor save on a T3 body is not something that is going to make me interested in them. I'm going to be taking them for other reasons. Having that built in as a quality of life change is absolutely fine. 0 to 1 unit per 1,000 points can have Feigned Flight. This is a really nice buff, and also giving them Fire and Flee and Veteran rolled in. That's a lot of buffs for this unit. So you can pay for Veteran, and you can't have Fire and Flee. I think this makes them more in line with what I'd like to see from some sort of ambushing, skirmishing, backline, special infantry unit. I think this makes them... This unit feels playable to me. I like the changes here. Giving them built-in Veteran. I don't know that they need it, but it is nice. Having Fire and Flee on there is really nice. I often don't find that I want to Fire and Flee on an infantry unit because you're shorter range, but just having the flexibility to do so is good. I do like it. They've got Evasive built in as well, so they're already quite hard to interact with, which needs to be the level of durability they have built in. Elves do not necessarily deal well if you ever catch them with shooting or combat, and that's fine. I think that is a good thing to build around. That I'd love for elves to be glass cannon, so that you have to play them in a smart way, but when they hit you, they hit you. This unit isn't going to hit you hard. It's going to be fairly mediocre in their output, honestly. And you're like, oh, but it's a ballistic skill 5 unit, and they've got repeater crossbows. Yes, but repeater crossbows are not good. I'd like to see repeater crossbows buffed. I don't think they have been. I've only skimmed this a couple of times, so if I've missed that, then I've really dropped the ball. But hold the phone. If we get to the repeater crossbows, my opinion on this changes. I think the Shades are not doing a lot of damage, but it feels like they're a good unit to spend like 90 points on, something like that. You take 6 of them, they pop up in the back lines. They've got, you've paid to give them... I don't really want to give them any weapons. Like, maybe you pay a point to give them additional hand weapons. Great weapons would be better, but it takes them up to 17 points a model, and then you lose the bonus of initiative. Anyway. Yeah, cool. Shades, already kind of playable. This makes them better. I like being able to buy Feigned Flight. Feigned Flight and Fire and Flee is a really nice combination. It just lets you reposition. And goes back to what I was just rambling about, where I was saying that the elves need to have durability and being hard to catch. That needs to be the way they play. But, yeah. Witch Elves. Strike First and Warband. Strike First on this unit is very interesting. Now, we saw some real upset with the peasants for Cathay getting strikes first. And just a reminder, that doesn't make the unit good. They're good as the peasant archer version, but they're not good as the ranked up infantry unit because they die immediately. This unit has a lot of the same issues while also being over twice the points, almost 3 times the points. They've got a lot of rules, and they've got 2 attacks each because they've got 2 hand weapons, and they've got a 3rd attack from Frenzy, but Frenzy is now even worse than it was previously. I still don't think this makes them good. Like, Strikes First, I don't think makes this unit good. Does the Death Hag have Strikes First? Yes, the Death has Strikes. Okay, like, so the way that this is strong is specifically against very few units. So if you charge me, let's say you charge me with a Lance of Bretonnian Knights, you've got 6 models in there, you've got 7 attacks, you've got the, you've got 6 attacks because you're in a Lance and 1 model doesn't get to attack, then you've got the 5 horse attacks. I'm going to swing at you, I'm going to hit you on 4s because I'm weapon skill 4 and your Knights are weapon skill 4 as well. I'm going to wound you on 4s, so I'm cut down to a quarter of the attacks because, you know, we are striking first, but with strength 3. And then I'm, getting through the armor save on a 3+. So against a unit of Knights, which are expensive models, that you're hitting and wounding on fours. So it's kind of the best case scenario. I know the armor saves in there throwing things off, but it takes what? 12 attacks to kill one knight? So if there's 6 witch elves in the front, they kill a single knight. My maths is right on that, isn't it? 12 attacks, 6 hits, 3 wounds, 1 failed save. Yeah. Like, this is not... Poison attacks do skew the maths on that slightly. But still, like, if you... Maybe it's like 11 attacks that change it. 5, 10 or 11. Anyway, point still stands. I don't think this makes them OP. I still don't think they're good. People are still going to like running them, and it will blunt some of the damage that is coming at them. But I think this is a fine change. It seems batshit on the surface, frankly. You look at it and go, you can't give an entire unit strikes first. I don't think it matters. I genuinely don't think it matters. Like, specifically things like Wild Riders will get ruined by this. But theoretically, you just have the flexibility to not make that charge if you are worried about it. Also, I think Wild Riders are initiative 5 off the top of my head. So if you get a flank charge, you're also striking at initiative 10. So you get to strike simultaneously. Yeah. Anyway, it's wild that we're printing strikes first in Warband. Warband, I'm on board with. We talked about it with the Death Hag. I don't care about the leadership change. I do care a little bit about the reroll. Well, I care about the reroll because they need to get in combat. The frenzy. It gives them the flexibility to fail the charge if they don't want to go into the thing. You know, if you roll a 5 and a 6, or a 1 and a 6, and you don't want to charge because someone's put a dragon in front of you, or whatever, you can then just use that reroll to fail the charge, stumble forwards, they get the charge into you, you still get hit first. I think these changes are fine, and I think they're still a bad unit because they just die to everything. They're completely naked, they don't have a ward save in there. I'm not really sure how they're meant to be used efficiently. Maybe it's the Blood Cauldron. Maybe that's what gets us there. But, yeah, this is fine. I might have been tempted to go further with them. Harpy's just the same, still a nice little cheap unit that does what they say on the tin. Love them. They didn't need to be changed. Sisters of Slaughter. This is highlighted, and there are some changes. Weapon skill 6. I know Val was talking about making them like war dancers, and he was not sure if they were meant to be the analog for war dancers for Dark Elves, and not that they necessarily have to be. But I think I like that as a space, because I don't see a huge amount of value for them as an upgraded version of Witch Elves. I don't think Witch Elves are good. This unit doesn't score because it's not in core, and it doesn't actually have increased output. It's got the, well, it does technically have increased output, in that you got the Lash and Buckler. Yeah, I think this is interesting. The Dance of Death being that you've got a ward save and enemy models get -1 to the maximum rank bonus is a very interesting rule. Do I think it makes them good? Not necessarily. Do I like the flavor of it? Sure. Yeah. I think maybe I'd like to see something along the lines of the dancers that you can take for the war dancers. I don't really know how you do it, and I think this is there's a reason that it's in yellow, right? Because Val also didn't know what he wanted to do with it. But yeah, I am curious to see what could be done with this in terms of getting some value out of it. I'd like to see the Lash and Buckler still give you a 5-up save in combat. Maybe that's what they need. Maybe they need... Maybe the fix for this style of unit, and I'm talking Witch Elves as well, is... And I was, thought about this with Slayers as well. You give them some sort of, like, good durability for free, just built in. You give them good durability against shooting, because they're evasive and they're hard to hit. But then, if you hit them in combat, you basically melt them. Now, I'm not saying they want, like, a 2-up and 3-up ward save. That's not what I'm saying. But, like, there's probably space to give them a 5-up ward save against shooting. Not non-magical, just all shooting. And then they get to combat, and maybe it's a 6-up ward save in combat. I think there's a lot of space to make this style of unit more playable, and I don't think this has taken that space, and I'm curious to see what could be done with it. Cold One Knights. This is maybe too good. I really like Cold One Knights already. I've been vocal about how I think they're one of the few good units that we have in the book. Giving them Veteran allowing to reroll the stupidity feels incredible, and it takes away the downside of a unit. There is an argument to be made that units should have downsides and more defined roles. I would say that's not really how the game is balanced. There's not really units with downsides. There are things that they're bad at, but actually physically having downside printed on units is not something that we have a lot of in the game right now. Troll Horde being, it's stupidity. Stupidity is the rule that makes it really hard for units to do what they want to do. So, seeing Veteran on there, I think I can get behind. Now, Countercharge, I'd love to have Countercharge on this unit. Countercharge being, if you've forgotten, if a cavalry monster or chariot charges you, you get to countercharge it, you move d3 plus 1 inches forwards, and that gives you rank bonuses, not rank bonuses, sorry, it gives you charge bonuses, gives you charge initiative, yada yada. I think that might be too much for the unit. And not to say that I think it makes them overpowered, but just, they're already pretty good. They already have like a quite defined role. Maybe we just don't need to see them having that. Like, they're all a heavier shock cavalry. Maybe we just don't expect to see countercharge on them. I can't be objective about this unit. It's one of my favourite units, and it's one of my favourite armies. I love Dark Elves. I probably should have said that at the beginning. If you look at my Old World rankings page, in fact, let me just pull that up. Old World rankings. You'll see that I have gone with lots of different armies to tournaments. It's going to crop poorly. Apologies. So no army have I been to a tournament with more than twice. So I've got Skaven twice, Wildhead twice, Warriors of Chaos once, Orcs and Goblins twice, High Elves twice, Dark Elves 7 times. This is my most played tournament army, which is bizarre to say, because I feel like I haven't played them at a tournament in quite a long time. I can't be objective about it. Every single Dark Elf list I've played has had one or more units of Cold War Knights in. So I think I would love Countercharge. I think Veteran on them that you can pay for, that feels fine. Countercharge might be too much. But I'm going to leave that to the wider community to ascertain, because I just can't be objective about it. I cannot be objective about this unit. I just want it. I want them to have everything, because they will grind through anything. Like, this unit, the reason it's so good, they've got the Banner of Harganeth, which is you always get an additional AP1 on all of your attacks. It's only 25 points. You go in, if you get the charge, amazing. If you don't get the charge, you just tank it and you try not to die. You've got like good leadership. You've got a lot of attacks anyway, so you're probably not losing by too much, hopefully. And then you've just got 3 attacks that are strength 4 AP1. That's really good. That's really good. You've also got a 2-up armor save, because you've got the full plate upgrade, and here for 4 points a model. Heavy, you got your shields and your armored hide as well. So yeah, just how good they are already, even with stupidity. Like I say, I don't think I can be objective about this unit. So let me know what you think. I would love to see this though. If this makes it into the full printed version, I'll definitely take them to a tournament. One of the square-based events. Dark Riders are unchanged. Dark Riders are fantastic. They didn't need any changes. They were, and probably still are, the best thing you can do in core with your points. But I think with the change to Corsairs, I'm pretty interested to see mostly Dark Riders, maybe a unit of crossbowmen to hold like a home field objective, because they're pretty tanky, and then also some Corsairs as well. 2 units with Fire and Flee is just money. The 3rd unit where you can't take this upgrade, that's less good. So I'm pretty okay with there being more choices to spend your points on in core that are not terrible. Then there's the change to Doomfire Warlocks, and this is something that I've seen people be upset about, and I understand why. And that is that they are being nerfed to be the same as Sisters of the Thorn, which is that you now randomly generate a spell, but you can take the Assailment spell, the signature spell from a lore. This does make them lose their current role. Their current role is that you're going to try and take Battle Lust, and you're going to just like supercharge a unit of Cold War Knights or a Dragon and just throw them into something. You can't do that anymore. However, they become tankier. Dark Runes, the 4-up ward save against any wound suffers. That also brings it in line with Sisters of the Thorn. And because previously they had against non-magical attacks, and you also are brought in line in terms of just the randomized spell. You can take the summoning, you can take the magic missile from demonology, so yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I think it's okay. I'd still love to see them having having some sort of weapon. Sisters of the Thorn have so many weapons on their profile, and Doomfire Warlocks are just like, oh, I got nothing. I got some hand weapon attacks. Oh, that's okay, Chief. Yeah, I think this is a good change to bring it in line with the rest of the books, and it's not just, you know, fulfilling a power fantasy of what you want things to do. So, yeah, there is a good chunk of discussion about this in the video that they recorded about this book, so I am not going to go too into it, but I agree. While it sucks to see this as like a change, I think it makes sense to bring them in line with the Sisters of the Thorn. We've got the Cauldron of Blood, and I think the Medusa are the... Alright, let's go on to the Cauldron of Blood. Dragged along, first thing is you can join a unit of Witch Elves, and then you go in the way that if you've seen Renegades, all of the chariots in there, so I'm talking like the Plague Furnace, the Doom Bell, the Cauldron of Blood. Is there another one? I think that might be it. They are reverted to previous editions where you could have them inside units, and that's how you move them, because otherwise they just don't really get to move at all. I think that's fine. Giving the unit a 5 at ward save, okay, yeah, I missed that. Just the unit getting a 5 at ward save. 150 points. Okay, sure. This might make the unit usable. I actually don't know what it has on at the moment. Does it have a ward save built in for the Death Hag? Here we go. Cauldron of Blood. So right now it's got... No, I don't think there's anything in there. It's just got the Blessings of Cain, which is the bound spell. Oh, yeah, so you've got a spell that lets you cast the ward save. Okay. And now it's just that you flat get it as an ability, and then you've got the Blessings of Cain that you can cast. Okay, I think that's fine. I think the unit is so squishy that you need to give it some sort of buff to output. In terms of the base size, I think I'd have liked to have seen it able to go on a chariot base. The fact that it now has to go on a 3-wide base feels a little bit rough. It's not like a problem, but it just takes up a lot of space. So while I don't know if the model actually fits on there, I think a 50 by 100 mil up to a 75 by 100 mil, so you can fit it on whatever base you have available, would make sense. I'd be I'd be on board with that. Blessing Cain, it's a self-range spell, and it's command range. Yeah, okay. So this is good, and again, this is just how it is at the moment. So it's a self-range buff, so you can cast it even if you're in combat, and you can still target, or sorry, not target, but it buffs everyone in your command range, so it's going to buff your unit that you're in. That's the main thing to look for. So it gives you +1 attack or the Cleaving Blow special rule. Both of these are actually pretty legit rules, honestly. These are both pretty solid. Cleaving Blow being a 6 to wound, just auto wounds on regular and heavy infantry / cavalry. Not auto wound, sorry. Ignores the armor save is what I was trying to say. It's not a killing blow, it just does a wound that you can't take an armor save on if you're those 2 unit types. And it goes in with the Witch Elves. Yeah, I think this is... Does this make them playable? Maybe it makes them playable. MR1 is a little bit low. Like, I understand not wanting to change too much, but I just worry that this is not going to be enough to make them decent. And also, this is a character upgrade, so these are points that are not going into dragons and are supporting your core. But yeah, I mean, you know how I was saying I can't be objective with the cold ones? I don't think I can be objective with the Witch Elves. I hate Witch Elves. I have, not like hate, they annoy me. I have yet to see them in a list that I thought was made better by having Witch Elves. So, Cold One lover, Witch Elf hater is the bumper sticker on the back of my car, on the back of my Cold One. So I can't be objective with that. But I think these changes all look fine. Like, nothing here seems particularly egregious. Just having the ward save all the time, I think, is good, because the unit is so squishy, and this is something that I talked about. You know, you wanted a ward save on the unit already. So, yeah, I don't know, with Strikes versus a 5 at ward save, does that make them playable? You can't even cast more durability on them as well, because durability from spells, all of the spells you have available, comes from ward saves. So there's no way to even like double down and make them the tankiest tanks to ever tank. So I think this is fine. And again, when I say fine, maybe just not good enough. That's that's an interesting. I'm curious to see this on the tabletop. I think this is one that I'd like to see with testing, because it's hard for me to conceptualize how well it's going to go. Bloodrack Shrine. How does this work? Oh, it's just become a standalone heavy chariot. This I do like, a 7-inch move chariot that's, I think they talked about it moves by magic, and it loses the Dragdalon. Honestly, I think this is solid. I think this is okay. It's a heavy chariot that I probably still don't use. Because it's 140 points. How many points is a Bloodrack Shrine? Like, if we're comparing this to a chariot, is that too cheap? Bloodrack Shrine is 175 points normally, and a Cold One chariot is 125 points. Okay, so that's our baseline. We've got a 3 attack character on the back. We're T5 with 5 wounds. We're 140 points with a 4 up armor save. And it has got impetuous, but you've got lots of other rules as well. Those poison attacks should probably say in brackets applies only to the Medusa, but I guess maybe they... Oh no, because the Shrine Keepers are also snake-like. Interesting. This is another one where I'm like, I think this might be too cheap compared to other chariots in the game. Not looking at you, Sky Lantern, but if you compare it to like the Black Orc chariot with T5 4 wounds and a 3-up save, which is 134 points by the time you pay for the great weapons. No, maybe it's okay. Maybe it's about where it should be. Having the halberd on the Bloodrack Medusa is nice as well. It does make sense for the model. So yeah, this is a heavy chariot, and you can't put characters on it, which means that my interest in it immediately goes away. I don't think it's overpowered. I think it does a job, and that job is an okay piece that you're spending 140 points on. T5 at 5 wounds though, that's not bad. That isn't bad. That's something that you could play around with. Yeah, I think this becomes a playable unit by making it a standalone chariot and making it a bit cheaper. Yeah, I don't love the impetuous on there, but, you know, it's gone from frenzy, so who am I to complain? Very interesting. I do think this one could do with more changes, but honestly, playtest it like this, and I'm curious to see whether it's playable. Dragons the same. Dragons are great. The only thing that I don't like about it is you have to take an attack with the serrated maw. Why do I not like that? Because I forget sometimes, and then you're like, oh, well, we gotta redo something or whatever. Manticore. +2 toughness. Oh yeah, because in the this is something, again, this has been in the Legacy PDF for a while. So mount options, Manticore, +2 toughness. Already, it was given +2. Why is this in the game? Well, if you look at Manticores for like Chaos, they give +1 toughness there. They've copied and pasted it across. I don't think they consider that Elves have a lower toughness in general than other factions. So this means that you're T5 on a Manticore, which is the same as a Chaos Lord on a Manticore. Now, an Exalted Champion on a Manticore is only T4 as well, but that's their own problem. So, sucks to suck. You've got a ward save built in. Yeah, I've played one of these at a tournament. It was fine. It was an okay buddy for a dragon. I didn't regret having it. All of the rules on there are okay. The War Hydra is pretty changed. The Bloodrack Medusa, changing from frenzy to impetuous, and going from a monstrous oh no, it is a monstrous creature. What was it before? Why has that changed? Unless they just changed it in the legacy pack previously. I'll come back to the other unit in a second. Bloodrack Medusa, it's 85 points and it's a monster. True type monstrous creature. Maybe they changed it to be a monstrous infantry or something like that in the legacy, in the Renegades pack previously. But anyway, this is back to where it was before. It's 15 points cheaper and it's impetuous. Sure, fine, whatever. It's got halberd. I think that halberd might need to be yeah, the halberd needs to be highlighted here. They've just missed it on the copy editing. But yeah, that's fine. I played around with one of these as a counter for vampire counts and had like some mediocre success with it, but it wasn't actually that good. It was more just the threat of it made them play more respectfully. I liked it as a tech piece. at 70 points, I can make it. It's easier to put the tech piece in, and it's impetuous now, so it's harder to be baited. Even though leadership 7 is pretty poor. But yeah, and then we've just got the 2 actual monsters. So let's talk now about the monsters. Okay, first of all, War Hydra. Let's look at the points of what we're paying for a War Hydra. 200, and the Cryptus is 195. Are they playable at all? No, absolutely not. They're completely terrible. And this is, we may have lost to one at WTC or, some monster spam, but there was another issue there. These were not good. If we think about monsters, my opinion on what a baseline decent monster is you look at the Giant Spawn and Nurgle, and you're going to say, Giant Spawn and Nurgle, they're overpowered, they're so good. And I say to you, objectively not true. You know why? Because they're not taken in every Warriors of Chaos list. If they were that good, you wouldn't ever see, Chosen Knights, which you see less frequently, to be fair, but you also wouldn't see the Warpfire Dragon, unless the Warpfire Dragon is also overpowered. Now, that is an argument you could make, but you're not here to argue with me, so I'm going to say my point is that at 170 points, that's about right for a monster. So 155 points for a War Hydra, which is 1 less wound, 1 less toughness, better armor save, same regen, and then also you have a potential to regain wounds. The regaining wounds is something that needs to be mathed out, but because you've got a lower wound pool, you've only got 5 wounds, at most, you're going to be rolling 4 dice. Maybe it should be on a 5+ instead of a 4+. But this thing is actually not that hard to kill. You went skill 4, which is nice, but you're only T5 with a 4-up save. This thing will get one-rounded by anything that's like particularly scary in the meta. You could put a Black Maul Beast Lord in combat with it, and you'd have a pretty good chance of one-shotting it. Now, it's obviously swingy because of the number of attacks, but if you roll like a decent number of attacks, you're going to feel okay. How do I feel about this at 155 points? I think that makes it an interesting points level. I actually think this is now somewhere where like, oh, maybe we consider playing it. And you also do get the 2 Beastmaster Handlers, which is interesting because you've got the 2 whip attacks as well. So you do get a little bit more value there. It's very slow. It's move 6 with no Swift Stride. But I think it's interesting. The fact that it starts with 2 attacks as well, and you gain attacks when you lose wounds. Yeah. Interesting. And the fact that like almost all of its attacks are going to come at strength user AP 0, multiple wounds 2, I think is interesting as well. So, yeah. It's a cheap Terror Causer. That is like the one thing I can say about this that maybe is too good, but it probably still isn't. Because where are you charging from? 12 inches out? Sure. I can probably live with that. Yeah. Cool. I think this is interesting. 155 points. You probably couldn't go lower than this, but I'm not sure that it is cheap enough. I'm probably wrong about that. The fact that you can now take more of them. How many can you take on the list? Are they capped on the legacy? I'll be honest, I didn't even look on the list here. So you can take uncapped Hydra's Charybdis Merworms. So let's say that you take 1 of them in special, then you could take like 3 in rare. So you could run like 2 Hydras, 2 Charybdis or something like that, or maybe like 3 Hydras, 1 Charybdis, whatever it ends up being. That's interesting. That is a monster spam angle that is not necessarily something that exists in the game at current. Cool. I'm curious to see if these are decent. I think they're playable. I think they're playable in the way that I think the Chariot is playable. And I'm like, okay, sure. And like, if we're doing this, oh god, I've got to scroll back up. Okay, page 29. If we're doing this, where is the Blood Rat Shrine? Okay, that's in rare as well. So I was just thinking, like, is there like a T5 spam list in here that you could go with? I don't think there is. I don't think it particularly worries me. But I guess then, you want to spend all your points on carrots anyway. Yeah. I'm curious to see if taking a lot of monsters / chariots is like an appealing way to play this list. Stomp attacks going up as well. Cool, that's fine. But yeah, I think maybe the only thing on here that maybe worries me a little bit is how feels bad this could be for your opponent. Maybe a 5+ gives you like, whenever you hit that wound coming back, that feels good. Or maybe it's just on a 4+ get a wound back. Or maybe like on a... You could make it on a 2+ you get a wound back. So that you're like, you're never healing back up to full. Your opponent's not struggling to slug through you with infantry. Like, oh, I did 4 wounds, but now you're back on full, and that feels terrible for me. But you get, consistently, if you've wounded me, I'm getting a wound back most of the time, but I've still got room in there for failure. Maybe a 2+ or a 3+. I think I like the single wound back on a 2+ more, but I don't know if that's correct. I've talked about this a few times. Warhammer is not a rule set that is well balanced, so is it the end of the world if we add one rule in on a unit that's maybe okay, that's like thematic and tells a story and has big splashy potential? I don't know. Needs playtesting, that's for sure. Then let's have a look at the Charybdis, which is down to 135 points. Okay, so it's gained initiative. It's lost so many points. It's lost 60 points. It's gained armor save. It doesn't have a regen. That's why it's so cheap. And it's T5, 5 wounds, 5 attacks, 4 up save. Yeah, I mean, that is cheap. It's got a single killing blow attack. So, like, the only thing that's changed is the points, the initiative, and the armor value. It doesn't have Swift Stride. It still moves 6. Damn. Okay. -1 to leadership as well. 135 points. I'm going to say that might be about where it should be cost, honestly. Without a regen, this thing is still relatively squishy. And it puts it at like the level of like a tanky heavy chariot, because that's kind of what it is. Okay, that's a bold change. And I think it might be about right. And I still think, I don't know if I want to take them. 135 points. Okay, so how many can we fit in a list? Times 3. Oops. I rolled my finger on the keyboard and didn't do what I wanted to do. Times 3. So 405 points. So there's no way to get like 4 things into special. It's only 3. Sorry, into rare. Okay, but you could go... Yeah, I don't know. That's wild. I didn't really look at these in my skims because I considered them to be bad units. But that's very interesting. Very interesting. It's wild that I'm looking at that and going, I still might not want to play them after they lose 60 points and they get some buffs. But yeah, cool. Okay, I don't think that's too far. I think that's something that absolutely should be play tested. Oops. This is something I'm less worried about the Charybdis. 135 points for this is probably about right. And I think it just really shows the state of where monsters are in the game right now. So, yeah, fuck it. Let's live a little. Let's go wild. Let's go crazy. Yeah. Okay. Well, that brings me to the end of this video. I will be reviewing all of the legacy PDFs. Try that again. I will be reviewing all of the Renegade Word documents as they come out. Again, if you want to see my rationale and my thinking about it, check out the video. I'll link it in the description. Do go and check out at least the first 5 minutes of the Squarebase video if you haven't seen it. It is a delight. And yeah, let me know your thoughts, because this is something that I think has potential to make the game a lot more fun for people who have legacy armies, and I hope that is the direction that it ends up going in, and also the direction that the community takes it in. So I hope that this leads to a positive change overall. We'll see. I'm quietly confident on that. Thank you for watching. If you've got this far and you haven't already, I would appreciate a thumbs up. It does help this video get picked up by the YouTube algorithm, but the main thing is watch time. So if you've got here, then I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Huge thanks as well to everyone who has become a member of the channel. Your support is incredible. It means that I'm able to keep doing this, and I really appreciate that as well. If you want to support me, you can become a member down below. There are 3 different tiers. If you're a member of the Longbeard tier or above, you are able to you get access to the VIP section in the Close Order Discord, which is linked down below. The Discord is open to everyone, but there are some areas only for VIP members. And if you are also interested in becoming more gooder at playing Warhammer, I do coaching, which you can find down below at patreon.com/close order. If you're watching this in January, then you'll see there is a 25% discount sale going on at the moment for your first month. Thank you very much.